Hey everyone, thanks for coming back. Up next, we have Lisa Forte. Did I pronounce your surname correctly?
You did. Well done.
It
We
means
usually
Awesome.
just say
loud.
it actually also means strong. Can I just say for the
Okay.
record? Yeah,
Yeah.
loud and
Excellent.
strong. Loud and
Awesome.
strong.
So thanks for coming on, Lisa. So why don't you just give a little bit about yourself and what it is you do?
Okay, so I left the police a couple of years ago in one of the cybercrime units, and I set up my own company. And we sort of specialize in social engineering, insider threats, things like that, and also sort of running crisis simulations, so rehearsing a cyber attack for the board and things like that, which is always really good fun. So that's sort of what we do.
Awesome. And the name of your company is pretty interesting. So how did that actually come about?
To be honest, I wish there was like this amazing story behind it, but it was actually an accident because when I was forming the company, I couldn't think of a name, and all the names I sort of thought, oh no, that's sort of boring, playing around with things, and it just so happened that that day I was reading New Scientist, the magazine, and in there was an article about some research that had been done by a university. And they discovered that goats can identify intruders into their herd just by hearing their voice. And I thought, that is incredible. So that's where red goat came from. And the sort of the funny byproduct of it, apart from being kind of memorable, is that one of my clients, when I go in, the receptionist says, "Oh, the goat lady's here." So I'm like, which I just think is brilliant.
Lovely. Because you know what, though, baby goats are adorable. So, I think that's a kind of cool thing.
Exactly. And I mean, being called the goat lady is just literally a dream come true, really. So
that's awesome. And I mean, your company tackles something that I personally worry about a lot in my role is around insider threats. So do you want to maybe dive in a bit more some of the things you've perhaps seen?
Yes, we've done a lot of research, actually. We did a research report that is like free, open source for everyone to download. On sort of reporting, and it was really interesting because I knew that generally if people saw suspicious behavior being conducted by one of their colleagues or senior managers or something like that they probably wouldn't report it. However, in our research, we actually discovered that basically senior people in an organization can do pretty much anything and nobody would report them, which was incredible. And in fact, the only people that colleagues were sort of felt comfortable to report at all were contractors. They were really happy to report contractors, but everybody else, they were just like, no, I'm not reporting that. So it just kind of goes to show that, you might think, oh yes, everyone would report something suspicious, but the reality is they probably won't.
Right. I mean, it's pretty interesting. Like, why do you think people are happy to report contractors?
I think partly because they're not really seen as part of the tribe. And as such, it feels like, well, if I go and report him, I'm less likely to be labeled as a snitch or, someone who can't be trusted. Whereas if I do that with one of my colleagues, then this might become very uncomfortable for me in my job going forward. And so for that reason, I think just weighing up the costs versus the benefits, I think it sort of skewed in favor of staying quiet for the most part.
Yeah, that makes it interesting. And the other side that I think insider threats for me is also worried about is just the sheer access that they already have. Do you think cybercrime or rather the organized crime is going to leverage this more and more? I mean,
oh yeah, we're seeing insider threats increase exponentially. I mean, even if you just look at the media, over the last 2 years, reports have gone up hugely in terms of sort of stealing intellectual property, stealing trade secrets, that sort of thing. In my experience, insiders typically are going for information that's really valuable. So probably customer personal information is not that valuable in this context. It's more trade secrets, business plans, client lists, things like that can be traded both to competitors but also on the dark web or to other governments potentially, depending on the industry you work in. And I think the reason we've seen such an increase is, if you think about it, back in the day, if you wanted to go and steal information from your employer, you would have to go and find the paper record, photocopy it, put it in your bag, then
Right.
somehow get it physically to somebody else. Now it's as simple as taking a photograph on your phone of the screen, and then sending that through a message almost instantly to anyone in the world, really.
Yeah. You know, and it's so powerful because the amount of data that can be stolen now boggles the mind. You know, and recently there was a U.S. indictment handed down of a he was an American citizen, but he was of Chinese descent. Copied literally terabytes of sensitive information to a hard drive and was basically intercepted at the airport. But terabytes of information in this day and
Wow.
age on a credit card sized device is not uncommon, you know?
No,
And
and
what
it's so quick as well. It
and
doesn't take very long.
what's amazing to me is that, you know, why the USB ports weren't disabled by a group policy object or a piece of third party software is really beyond me. I mean, this seems to be like really basic. Are you encountering these sort of basic failures of security like on a regular basis?
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty. They're often very basic things that are, sort of gotten wrong. I think one of the problems we have is that for years and years and years, companies especially have wanted this really open, kind of welcoming atmosphere for their staff. They want everything open and sharing, and so on and so forth, right? And I think that's a lovely sentiment. However, it kind of does run counter to security in some situations. And even if you've locked everything down, I walk around some of my clients who are banks, and they've got all their staff with their personal mobile phones sitting on the desk.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, if you're picking up your phone and you're videoing or photographing the screen, what's going to detect that other than other members of staff?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing I've seen often is like one of the arguments is, oh, but we vetted them. And to me, that's just doesn't always pan out. I mean, we have the likes of the NSA who obviously know a lot about people, and they still get breached by insider threats. So
Yeah.
what's your advice to companies? Like, how do they help prevent this kind of thing?
I think actually, it's sort of in agreement with you. I think actually over-reliance on vetting leaves you more vulnerable because, for a start, most companies, don't have the ability to put people through lie detector tests and a whole load of other testing, right? It's not reasonable to do that. Employment law isn't going to look very kindly on a lot of those sorts of things. So you've got this point in time of sort of a document that apparently gives you a sort of tick or cross against an individual. But obviously things happen in people's lives and they move jobs. And so, yes, you might be cleared for one job, but as you get promoted and get more access, your lifestyle changes. How is that sort of recorded and risk assessed? So I think actually if you're over-reliant on initial vetting, you're probably more vulnerable overall.
Yeah. I think that's a really great point. And then also the revisiting of the vetting too, like circumstances change, like you said, person could be going through ugly domestic matter or fall into debt. All sorts of things could change their risk profile. And, if you're assessing that only on a 5-year cycle for secret clearance, or DV clearance, as you call it in the UK, you could miss an insider threat for years.
Well, exactly. And I mean, that was the problem with Edward Snowden, wasn't it? I mean, their vetting was fine, but there were lots of other things that were flagged up through different departments that weren't brought back to the central department that deals with this sort of clearances. That had they done that, they would have known well in advance that this was a big red flag. So
also, they needed a security guard that really liked Katy Perry and would say, "Oh man, you got a Katy Perry bootleg there? That's awesome. I'd like to listen to it." That's not Katy Perry. Blam blam blam.
So the Edward Snowden thing also raises another question. Is like, so Edward Snowden wasn't a direct employee of the NSA, if I remember. Yeah. So how does that actually bring into things as well? How do you vet contractors?
I think it's very difficult, and I think one of the things that companies are starting to realize, and I think more so in the US than in Europe, but it is filtering down in the culture in Europe as well, is that actually when you hire a third party, you're relying on them having vetted their staff, who then come into your organization.
Yeah.
And actually, some of the projects are rushed through. So the vetting is rushed through as a result as well. And I think, naturally, there's going to be mistakes. And certainly for clients that generate a lot of intellectual property or sort of financial houses, I think there's a very, very serious risk here that this information could be exfiltrated.
Does a lot of this crime, though, Lisa, from the UK law enforcement? I know, like, the Americans have a very open system. They have the public access to court records system and regular press releases on espionage-related stuff and cybercrime-related stuff. In the UK, this seems to be very close hold. Is there a lot of stuff that's going on that isn't reported or doesn't make the news and is handled, in the British tradition of hush-hush?
Potentially. I think the other problem in the UK, certainly when I was in law enforcement, one of the problems that we had was that people just weren't reporting cybercrime. And I think if you think about it for a moment, if an insider stole information that wasn't personally identifiable information, there would be no actual obligation to report to anybody.
Right. Okay.
You don't have to report it to the ICO. So if you lose R&D,
secret Death Star plans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you lose that, is it better to stay quiet? I mean, from your share prices perspective, I'm not sure you'd want to announce that someone has stolen that. And I think, if you look at the companies that have had insider threats manifest and this become public, they've had hugely devastating effects to their share price and to their public reputation, almost more so than if it had been an outsider attacking them.
So are you familiar with the Morrison's case?
Not in great detail, but yes, I am.
So the idea there is, and I love this case because I think it's probably the coolest thing. So you have a person that's dealing drugs at work, right?
Yes.
Ostensibly a criminal matter, right? However, in order to, I guess, repay the drug debt, the individual has been stealing sensitive information from the company's payroll system. Okay.
Yes.
So now you have an ICO privacy investigation because the sensitive data was lifted, right?
Yes.
So Morrison's decides that they're not going to settle with the employees who launch a class action saying, hey, this drug dealing criminal guy sold our data to fuel his drug empire desires. We're suing you. Morrison turns around and says, no, we're not. We're going to go to court. They go to court. They lose. They go to the Court of Appeals. They lose. I think the matter is going to be solved sometime in 2020 or 2021 in front of the Supreme Court. The problem here is we have an issue now where if Morrison's is held accountable for the actions, the criminal actions of an employee, at that point, we're blowing privacy out of the water because now we need to monitor our employees' behavior for criminal activity.
I just want to add, sorry, I think it's also really important to this to add that employee had already access due to his job to that information. Sorry, Lisa, I just meant that.
He was an auditor, right? I think it was a contracted auditor. So, yeah. Interesting point, though, about class action. We don't really know about class action in the UK much, apart from what we read that's happening in the US. Because class action is a pretty knee-jerk reaction to any major incident whereby lawyers will pile on everybody that's involved and go, hey, guys, let's club together and sue the shit out of the company. But I think what we find with class action is that the people at the very end of it, i.e. the victims, generally get pennies.
I want to hear Lisa's thoughts on this one, because I think the juxtaposition of criminal and privacy and holding the business accountable is kind of a neat area where I think you might have some great insight.
Yeah, so I think traditionally, and I studied law at university. I did a master's in law, so in law is sort of my thing. Generally speaking, if during the course of employment, whilst you're actually on duty, as to speak, you do something, then traditionally in the UK, employers would be vicariously liable for those acts.
Right.
And the only way you would get out of that is if you could prove that the employee was effectively off on a frolic of his own somewhere else, and you had no knowledge or reasonable belief that you could detect it, sort of thing. The problem here
you wouldn't
is
suspect that Mike was running a drug empire from his company.
No, but you might be able
Sorry,
to
Mike.
have reasonably detected that Mike was doing some abnormal things and potentially exfiltrating data. That could be something that would be within your control.
Okay.
So in that respect, I don't disagree with the judgment. However, what's kind of interesting is that concurrently in the UK, there's been a very big movement, especially by the courts, and in the EU generally, actually, to really strike down any sort of aggressive employee monitoring. And they've really, really been very strict with this. And they've said it's really not acceptable unless you can prove that it is proportionate and necessary for the aim you're trying to achieve.
Right.
So it's something that I think is going to cause a lot of ripples in the industry generally within the EU. Because monitoring all your staff, everything they do, I don't think will work anymore in an employment tribunal.
It also comes down to monitoring employees, and this is where I always feel that you should monitor behaviors. So is that something you agree with? So you don't actually monitor the employee, you monitor their behaviors.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would come down to how intrusive that was. For example, I recently read about a case where a company had bring your own device, and they actually monitored activity on the employee's own devices, which was deemed excessive and ruled that you were not able to do that. But typically they've said things like, being able to monitor certain private messaging accounts and things like that employees use is not okay.
Right.
So I think you have to tread really carefully. And I personally feel that the best way to tackle this is to, again, going back to the same thing that we always say with security, is working out where your assets are that an insider might want to steal if they exist in your company, and then monitoring just those employees as opposed to your entire cohort of staff.
Right.
Yeah, totally agree.
So much to get our heads around on this, Lisa, and I could talk to you about like this forever because of that law enforcement background and that understanding of the UK law. Thank you so much for participating. It's been absolutely our pleasure. And
I hope everyone is donating. It's such a worthy cause, and
thank you.
I really hope that the donations keep rolling in, because it's really important.
Yeah, we're sitting at 5,000 now, and if we can get to 5,255, a challenge from Al Jaffe Day Security is he will donate 1,000 quid to our cause. So thank you so much for reminding us that donations are why we're doing this, because at this point, we're not really sure why we're doing this. All right.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
Cheers.